Hey everyone, it's Raven. Welcome back to the nest. Welcome to episode 2 of the Budget Beginner series. During today's video, we are going to talk about variable expenses and cash envelopes. So if you are interested in that, stay tuned. Alrighty, so first I want to go ahead and do the giveaway for the loyal subscribers. I mentioned it last week and I went over the names for the giveaway, and I'm actually going to pop in a recording here of the giveaway, but I want to go through the names first that were entered in. There were a total of 7 subscribers entered for loyal subscribers. We have Better Late Than Broke, Debt Free Dad, Ana Dela Cruz, Island Girl Forever, Mommy Trader, Nicolette Graham, and Tara Canavera. I think that's how you say your name. I think that's what we said. So those are the 7 subscribers that have been entered into the giveaway. So now I'm going to pop on the screen recording, and I actually have to get the screen recording going. And go. All right, running. Uh-oh, there we go. The winner is Ana Dela Cruz. All right, so definitely make sure that you first of all, congratulations. Definitely congratulations. I plan to do more of these kind of for loyal subscribers, so this will definitely not be the last one. So Ana Dela Cruz, make sure that you either email me. My email address is below in the description box, or you can send me a message on Instagram, a DM on Instagram, just to kind of let me know how you prefer to get your $100. The options are Cash App, PayPal, and I believe I do have Venmo. Those are my 3 main options that I have. Well, not main, but only options that I have in order to send you your funds. So congratulations, Ana Dela Cruz, and let's go ahead and get into today's video. All right, so what I will be talking about today, oh, I want to give a little another little reminder about the random giveaway. Remember, in each of the episodes of the Budget Beginner series, there will be a secret word inserted into the video. We already had episode 1 last week. Today's episode 2. So after today's episode, we got 2 more to go. So you should already have 1 word. Today's video, you will have a second word. So once you gather up all 4 words, you can either email them to me or DM them to me. And once you do that, your names will be entered into a drawing for another $100. So just wanted to give a little reminder about that. Make sure to keep an eye out for the secret word of today. All right, so what we'll be going over today are variable expenses and cash envelopes. First, I want to start talking about the difference between what is a variable expense and what is a fixed expense, because those are kind of the 2 types of expenses when you're talking about your budget, because you have more of your fixed expenses, which are things that are just a set amount, which is going to be maybe like your subscriptions, like say your Netflix, your Hulu's, your car insurance, your cable bill, you know, all those kinds of things are considered fixed expenses. Your debt payments are technically considered fixed expenses because it typically set as a certain amount for each time that it's due. Now, your variable expenses are expenses that can tend to fluctuate, whether on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis. Now, variable expenses, examples of those, going to be food, your groceries, gas, personal spending, any type of allowance monies that you have for yourself. So although, because I'm going to get into cash envelopes, and I definitely don't want to confuse anybody, because I do have a set amount for my cash envelopes, but I don't necessarily know the actual amount that I will be spending for that particular category, which makes it a variable expense because it can vary. So that's kind of the difference between a fixed expense and a variable expense. So how cash envelopes tie into that? Cash envelopes is essentially a system where you are allotting a certain amount of money to a certain category within your budget. So like I mentioned, examples: gas, food, personal spending. Those could be split out into separate categories, and then you would have a set amount for each category. So your cash envelopes can either be physical cash envelopes, or they can be electronic. I've done both. I'm currently doing physical cash envelopes, whereas previously I was doing electronic. Now, when I first started budgeting, kind of into this kind of journey and everything, I was doing physical cash envelopes, and then I transitioned to electronic. There's really no better way of doing it. Each one has its cons and pros, and I can just briefly go through kind of the cons and pros of each one. So like with your electronic, the pro is that you're not having to keep up with cash. You're not having to worry about going to the bank to get out different denominations of cash. You don't have to worry about the risk of carrying around cash and losing it. Just all those kinds of things. You don't have to, you know what I'm saying? You just don't have to keep up with all the cash, and then you have to keep up with the change. It's just a lot involved in that. Whereas with the pros, for me, a pro with physical cash envelopes is that it kind of helps you keep that budget a little bit more in check, in my opinion, because you're actually seeing that money go away. It's more of a mental thing than a physical thing. It's like you have the money in your hand, so as you are spending it, you are seeing it go away. Whereas with some people using a debit card, you don't really get that connection with the cash that it's actually leaving because you're swiping a card. Now, not to say that that's not the case with everybody, because some people may have that connection with their debit card and their cash. I'm like, I'm swiping my card, my money's being deducted out of my account. But some people just don't think about it on that type of a scale. So that's kind of the pros and cons with, you know, physical cash envelopes. So I'm trying to think of another pro for physical cash envelopes. The cash envelopes could be very nice looking. You can you can find some pretty nice actual cash envelopes that you keep in your wallet. So I guess that's a pro to me. I mean, to me it is. And if you just like carrying cash, that is a pro. If you're just a person who likes to carry cash. So now with electronic, kind of a con to electronic is kind of the same as, it's like the opposite of the pro with the physical cash envelopes. With the electronic, you don't have to carry cash, and you don't have to have that connection with cash, which that's not really a pro. But for people who don't like to carry cash, electronic would be a better option for you if you just are a dead set against carrying cash. And I've always been one of those people. I hate carrying cash. So and then another pro for electronic cash envelopes, but it could also be a difficult pro for some people. You can do better analyzing of your spending, and I'm actually going to kind of show that here in this video in just a bit. Like I said, you can kind of analyze your spending a little better because it'll all be like within an app, or you can print out your bank statements and kind of check your spending. Even some bank accounts have now where they will automatically analyze your spending for you, and kind of show you how much you're spending over the course of a month in each category, which is really, really good. And like I said, I'll go into more detail about analyzing spending in just a bit. So that's a kind of a pro with the electronic. You don't have to manually track your spending, whereas you would with physical, you would have to manually track your spending. So that could be added to the con list for, you know, physical cash envelopes. So you don't really have to do that too much with electronic. You may have to a little bit, but maybe not as much. So that's kind of a pro with electronic. Pitfalls of electronic is you're swiping that card and you don't really just see the cash going away. So that's just one of the cons of electronics. Now you have a few different options depending on if you're going to do electronic cash envelopes or physical cash envelopes. Well, not really many options with physical, but you do have options with electronic. So really with physical cash envelopes, you just have that. You have actual cash envelopes, which is what I have in my wallet. You just have the envelope, you have the category on it, and I mean, you have options as far as like what kind of designs of envelopes you want, but I mean, essentially they all do the same thing, which is hold your cash. So there's not really many options there. But with electronic, there are various different options. The method that I used, I had multiple bank accounts. some of my OG watchers may know this. I had several different bank accounts for each category of my cash envelopes. So like food had its own checking account, gas had its own checking account, you know, so on and so forth, where that's how I kind of kept everything separate, and then everything was automated through my my paycheck. It went into, the set amount went into each paycheck. So it was very easy, very, you know, seamless, and I had no issues. Other options would be to have, of course, one checking account for just your cash envelopes, but then you would kind of have to know in your mind or on paper on your budget kind of how much is, you know, set aside for each category. And then, you know, not try to mix and mingle and all of that. Even though the money is kind of intermixed in together, you still have to kind of have it separated out into categories. And then lastly, there are some app options for electronic cash envelopes. There one in particular I'm going to mention is Cube Money, and that's actually spelled Qube. That is an option because they have a cool feature where they can set it up in one account where it can be split up into like different categories. It's actually a pretty cool app. I've not used it personally, but I have seen quite a few YouTube videos of it, so you can go search that if you would like. Like I said, it's Cube Money, Qube Money. So there are some options there when it comes to electronic cash envelopes. And so let's start talking about, how do you set up your cash envelopes based on your variable expenses? Now, I mentioned earlier about analyzing your spending. So I guess you're wondering, well, how do I do that? There are probably various different methods for analyzing your spending, where you can maybe over a period of time keep track of kind of how you're spending and all of that, and then decide upon what your how much you're going to put into each category. That is an option. The route that I went when I first started my kind of budgeting journey and all of that, I just simply printed off one of my bank statements, and I had to go back for the purposes of this video. I had to go back quite far into my bank account situation to pull this up, because I don't use my Wells Fargo account in this way anymore, just swiping for whatever. My Wells Fargo account is used strictly for, my checking account is used strictly for paying my bills from and whatever additional overflow I may have. So, you know, I don't really have like charges on my account like this anymore. I'm actually quite embarrassed. That's not why I covered up these charges, but because some of them have some pretty personal information on it, so I just left the amounts out. But essentially I had to go back and get an older statement so that I could show you all kind of what I mean. And let me grab some highlighters so that we can demonstrate. So I have highlighters here, and you may need a few different colors, or you could also use a pen, but I would probably recommend a highlighter because it's just easier. I'm one of those people, so it's just easier with the highlighter. So I have these different colored highlighters. So pretty much once you have decided upon what categories are going to be a part of your cash envelopes, everyone's categories are different. I follow one YouTuber. She has like 10 different cash envelope categories, and it works for her. So you have to always do what works for you. Me, I just have 5 straightforward categories, and that's it. But like I said, you have to do what works for you. So first you kind of have to like sit down and think about what categories you need to have in your cash envelopes. And it would differ based on, you know, your circumstances, you know. If you have kids, you don't have kids, you have pets. Just depending on your life circumstances and your situation, your cash envelope categories will look very different from the next person. So if you sit down and you look at it and say, oh my God, I have like 12 cash envelopes categories, I would definitely recommend not starting with that many, just so you don't get overwhelmed. But definitely don't feel bad if you have quite a few, or if you don't feel like you have enough. Budgeting is a personal thing, and it's person-centered. goodness, I'm thinking about a training that I went to, but it's very person-centered. So don't feel bad if yours doesn't look like somebody else's, because it's your life, your money, your budget. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So once you sit down and you decide on your cash envelope categories, then you want to go through and say, okay, well, how do I figure out how much money I need to put towards that? And this is what you're going to do. You are going to analyze your spending. And as I mentioned, there's many methods to doing this, but this is just the way that I did it. So I pulled up one of my bank statements, and basically what I did was I gave each category a color, which technically I need another color because I have 5. Here we go. All right, there we go. So each category has a color. So I may say, okay, food is going to be, food and groceries will be yellow, home will be green, and then personal. You know what? I'm gonna get mixed up. We're just gonna do it in order of how it is on this paper. We got home, personal, food, pet, and gas. Okay, so I got all my 5 colors ready to go. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna go in and you're gonna analyze maybe a month of your statements, maybe 2 months, and you're gonna sit down and you're gonna look at, okay, what was considered a home purchase? Okay, I went to Dollar General and got some household supplies. So let me highlight that. And then I may have picked up, you know, whatever, some picture frames or something, you know what I'm saying, home purchase. So let me go ahead and highlight that. So those were my home. You would go through and just mark off your home purchase. What are you going to consider a home purchase? Put that in there. So next we have personal. I'll go in here and put in, okay, I spent $100 on getting my nails done. And then later in the month, I went and got a massage. So there's that. Next, we're going to talk about food, which is probably honestly most of the transactions on this sheet. And that's why, like I said, I'm just so embarrassed. So we're going to go through and mark off what was food. See, here's a little Sonic, here's Wingstop, here's we went out to eat that day, here's something else, and then I went to the grocery store, and then I had another grocery trip, and just like I said, you just go through here and you mark off what is what. And then we may go in and say, okay, I had a pet purchase here, another pet purchase here. And then lastly, we're going to go in for gas. We got a little gas purchase there. Gas, and then gas, and gas. And I mean, you get the idea. Essentially, you get the idea. I'm going through and I'm marking off what kind of purchase was what. And like I said, and you would do this maybe for a month of your statement. You would just go through your statement and kind of lay that out. Then again, like I said, if your bank app has a feature where you can go in and see like a dollar amount, how much you're spending in each category, because I believe Wells Fargo does do that in their app. You have to play around with it a bit to find it, but I believe Wells Fargo has that in their app where they will analyze out your spending and tell you exactly how much across a month, how much you're spending in each area. But of course, those are designated set areas, so you can't go in and add in your own, you know, creative areas or whatever, but they kind of will give you the standard areas. Like they may give you an entertainment category, food, gas. I know those are like the main 3 that are like on there. So you can definitely go in and see for at least those categories, because usually with the variable expenses in the cash envelopes, food and gas is probably definitely going to be one of your categories. So that's always an option for you. So once you go through and analyze your spending, you also want to think about being realistic. When you're taking these numbers and adding all this up and seeing how much you are spending in gas a month, or how much you're spending in personal or home or food, you want to be realistic in the amount that you're setting, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to restrict yourself so much, but you also want to work within what you know, how much money you have. You want to work within your budget, but you don't want to over restrict yourself. So you don't want to say, okay, I'm only going to spend $50 a week on food, but then it's you, and then you have a whole army at home. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to like be just completely restrictive, or you don't want to say like, okay, I know for a fact that I go get my nails done every 2 weeks, but then you want to put your personal spending at like $100 a month. Now we know if you go into the nail shop, if you go in every 2 weeks, it's going to be more than $100 a month. So you know what I'm saying? You want to be realistic, but then you also want to work within your budget, as well as, you know, sometimes you do have to make sacrifices. That's true. But you do not want to restrict yourself so much to where this is not something that you're going to be able to sustain, because budgeting is a lifestyle. It is not like some fly-by-night thing that, I mean, it can be if that's what you choose for it to be. You just want to budget to get yourself in a better position and then go back to balling out the frame, then, you know, that's your business. But how I feel about budgeting is that it is a lifestyle. And it is a moving and breathing type thing where it can change, but budgeting is a lifestyle. So you don't want to make it so restrictive to where it's not something that you're going to stick with. And that was honestly a lot of my problem in the beginning, was that I was restricting myself so much that budgeting was just this thing that was like, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm not doing it. So you have to make it comfortable for you, whereas at the same time you are going to have to challenge yourself a little bit. I'm going to say that. So I'm getting all off topic, but so once you analyze your spending and then you get down to the nitty gritty of deciding upon an amount. So that's pretty much what your cash envelope amount is for that month, or, you know, once you divide that down into weeks or every 2 weeks. There's really no set way of doing cash envelopes. Some people do them bi-weekly, which is like every 2 weeks. Some people do them weekly. Some people do them monthly. It just really depends on how often you are paid and how often you want to do cash, you know, set up your cash envelopes. It's just totally up to you. But I've seen most people do them by week, by the week, or bi-weekly. I'm currently doing them weekly just because it just that's just what I want to do. Like I said, you always want to do what works for you, and doing it weekly works for me, and it works for me in the purposes of why I am doing cash envelopes. So, some caveats I would say for variable spending and cash envelopes. Variable spending is kind of in the name. They vary, which means that they can fluctuate. And sometimes the fluctuation is not necessarily due to the actual category itself, but it may be due to like some circumstances in, you know, your life. They could especially fluctuate when you're first starting out. So definitely don't worry if, you know, you set a certain amount and then you realize that amount was not enough or too much. You kind of have to, it's going to take you a minute to get to that sweet spot in a sense. To where, you know, it's kind of like, you know, but for me, I sometimes would err on the side of caution with trying to stick to a certain amount. You want to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Adding a little bit more for me makes sense than budgeting to less, if that makes sense. So if you're deciding upon an amount, let's say you're going to spend $100 a week in groceries. I would probably add maybe another $5 or $10 onto that just to be safe, because that way, even if you do have extra left over, you can choose to save the extra. People do different things with whatever they have left over in their cash envelopes, but you can choose to save it, or you can choose to just add it to the next week. You know, it's just all about you and what you want to do. And then lastly, I just wanted to add in about kind of tracking your cash envelopes. This is definitely not something that you have to do, but I definitely wanted to mention it since in episode 1 I mentioned about, you know, tracking your budget and on paper and all that stuff. You definitely don't have to keep it on paper. You can keep it like in your phone, or, you know, however you choose, just so that you know, and it's just kind of a running thing in your mind of, okay, this is how much I'm setting aside for each category. So you can use it in like a planner style, similar to what I do, or like I said, you can keep it in your phone, you know, just how you choose to, just kind of, because for me, when I put things down on paper, it helps me commit it to memory. So that's another tip that I wanted to add in there. All right, guys, so that is going to be it on the discussion of variable expenses and cash envelopes. I hope that you enjoyed the information as well as the video. Definitely go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you did. Also, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you are not already subscribed, because remember, that is how you become eligible for that random giveaway of $100. It's for subscribers, so you do have to be subscribed. Hope you caught that secret word within the video. Make sure to go ahead and put that with the first one from episode 1, and stay tuned for episode 3 and 4, where you will get your final 2 words. All right, guys. See you next time. Peace.